Hello, just a quick one before we get into today's episode. I'm running my next Amazon Seller Support and Connect session at 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday the 6th of May. It's completely free, and if you're selling on Amazon and feeling a bit stuck or you've got questions you want answered properly, this is for you. It's a relaxed session, part update, part Q&A, and you can bring whatever it is you're working on. I'm going to put a link in the show notes for you to book your place. It's completely free. I'd love to see you there.
Welcome to the Bring Your Product Idea to Life podcast. This is the podcast for you if you're getting started selling products or if you'd like to create your own product to sell. I'm Vicky Weinberg, a product creation coach and Amazon expert. Every week, I share friendly, practical advice as well as inspirational stories from small businesses. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this episode of Bring Your Product Ideas to Life. So today I want to talk about reviews and specifically Amazon reviews, although some of what I speak about will translate other marketplaces as well. So I want to talk about why reviews matter, when to start working on getting them, how to get them, and importantly, how to get them and remain compliant, which is super important on Amazon. Plus, I'm also going to talk about how, in my opinion, volume of reviews matters slightly more than your star rating. So stay tuned for that. So let's start off by talking about why reviews matter. And some of this, by the way, will seem very obvious, but it also seems like a really good place to start. So having reviews drives conversions on your listings. So you get more sales on your listings if you have reviews than if you don't have reviews, which is why this is the absolutely first thing I advise brands to work on once they have an optimized listing. So once your listing's set up, it's as good as it can possibly be. The first thing I always recommend is get some reviews because, you know, and we'll talk a bit more in a moment about why I prioritize reviews before ads even, but reviews give you social proof. Customers are far more likely to buy something when they can see that others already have and they can see what people thought about it. I don't know about you, but I don't buy anything without reviews. I bought a dress recently and it was from a website, a brand that don't have reviews on their website. I don't know why in 2026. Just that baffles me. But I knew that this was a brand that was stocked in other places. So I literally went to all these other places, all these other stores I knew stocked the same brand because I wanted to read the reviews because it was really important. I was like, I don't want to buy this and have to take it back because it's either going to be too short because I'm fairly tall or it's not going to sit right. Or, you know, sometimes you don't realize that the fabric's weird or something until someone else points it out. I just wanted to know what other people's opinions were before I spent my money. And I'm sure that I'm not alone in that. And yes, of course, someone could see your brand new product on Amazon and decide to go to your website and check out the reviews, but they possibly won't, partly because I think the purchases we're making on Amazon sometimes are not always as considered purchases, if you see what I mean. Sometimes it's something that we need sort of quickly. And if there's so many options there that already have reviews, then we're very likely to just go for one of those. So if I was looking for a gift for someone, for example, and I came across two listings and one had some reviews and one didn't, I probably wouldn't have the time in that moment to go and look up the list, you know, the product with no reviews and see what people thought about it elsewhere. Because if there's something very similar there already that's got reviews and I can get it next day because it's probably Prime, be honest, I'm probably going to buy that. And I think lots of people will as well. Aside from like the customer side, it's reviews are also a really strong signal to Amazon's algorithm, which I know I've talked about before. That I've done full episodes on the algorithm, so you can go back and listen to that if you like, because having reviews tells Amazon that your product is credible and it's worth showing. So reviews really do help. And it's particularly important, as I say, for new brands on Amazon. So if you've been selling on Amazon for a while and you've got a new product, it's slightly easier because, you know, you might have other products with brilliant reviews and customers can kind of see that, especially if you're linking your product, you know, if you've got variations set up or you're using Ray Plus content or you've got a store, it doesn't feel so much of a risk if people go, oh, this is a new product from this brand and, you know, the other products have all got great reviews, so I can take a risk on this. It's still hard, and I would still say, even if you are an existing brand with new products, you still want to get reviews on those products, and we are going to talk about how to get reviews a bit later. But if you're a brand new brand on Amazon, even if you're, you know, an established brand elsewhere and you're getting sales on another channel, it's still really important to get those reviews on Amazon. But in good news, if you are an established brand and you've got happy customers on another channel, we can use that to help with your Amazon reviews. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So coming back to something I referenced just a moment ago, I always prioritize getting reviews on Amazon before running ads. And this is because ads, what they basically do is they bring traffic, they bring people to your listing, but reviews help convert that traffic. And if you don't have any reviews on your listing, ad spend is often, I don't want to say wasted, but let's say inefficient. The same as I also talk about the fact don't run ads until your listing is as optimized as it could be, is exactly the same thing. Because if your listing isn't set up for conversion, whether that's because your listing isn't optimized or whether you don't have any reviews on it yet, it's going to convert at a lower rate, which basically means higher ad costs. Either your ACOS is going to go up or your ROAS is going to go down, depending which of those metrics you look at. And early reviews really do help listings perform better long term on Amazon. And yeah, my philosophy always is don't pay for traffic unless you're set up to convert it. And yes, of course, you could run ads to a listing that wasn't optimized, and you could run ads to a listing with no reviews, but it's just going to be more inefficient. So while I know that you've probably, especially if you're new to Amazon, you've just spent time getting your listing set up and it's perfect and really well optimized, of course you want to start making sales and driving traffic. So it's very frustrating when someone like me says, well, actually, there's one more step before you can do that, but I promise it is worth it in the long term. So let's talk a little bit now about how to actually get reviews on Amazon, and importantly, how to get them and remain compliant. So the first thing I have to mention is Amazon Vine. So this is Amazon's official reviewer program. I've done a full episode on this, which I'm going to link to in the show notes, but I will cover it a little bit here as well. But if you want to hear me go into lots more detail, go over and listen to that full episode. It's only about 10 minutes long, but it will be useful if you're interested in potentially using Vine. So basically, Amazon has a pool of people called Vine reviewers, and if you are eligible for Amazon Vine, and to be eligible, you need to be signed up for brand registry. You need your products need to be available via FBA because Amazon has to be able to send it to reviewers. The way it works is you tell Amazon, I'm going to give X amount of products for Vine, and then Amazon will offer it to their reviewers. They'll get one free of charge, which is obviously the cost to you because you are giving that product for free, and then they have to leave you a review. There is a cost structure. I won't go into massive detail, but if you enroll 1 or 2 units, there's no fee other than the products you're giving away. But in my opinion, really, you can do it for 1 or 2 units, but think carefully because you can only enroll your products in Vine once. Ideally, you'd want to be doing more than that. Ideally, you'd probably want the next tier, which is 3 to 10 products, which is £60. If you can afford it, and obviously you have to budget for this, because the fee is the same, it's £60 whether you're enrolling 3 or 10 items. I would go for 10 if you can, because as I say, the fee's the same, and yes, you're giving away more products, but also 10 is a good number of reviews to get started. So if you can afford that £60 plus 10 products, that could be a relatively easy way to get 10 reviews, pretty quickly. And then if you enroll 11 to 30 units, you pay £140. So that's just a quick overview of the costs. I think that there are some good reasons to use Vine. First one is it's fully compliant. So you're not going to get in trouble for using Amazon Vine. In fact, Amazon will encourage it. And it's also a really quick way to get some initial reviews. Once you submit the product, depending what your product is, hopefully they go fairly quickly. They get snapped up by reviewers, and then the reviews start to come in, and it really is as easy as that. And Amazon manage all of the, asking for the reviews and chasing them up if they don't leave them on time. That's all on them. So that's quite nice because there's very little for you to do other than sign up and pay the money and make sure you've got the FBA stock to cover it. Of course, there are some downsides as well. One, of course, being the cost. So you do have to factor in whether you can afford this. If you have budgeted to spend money, let's say you're just launching on Amazon and you've budgeted money for ads, it could be that you could use the money you'd budgeted for ads for the first month and instead spend that on reviews, possibly. But that's just a suggestion. But I do appreciate that there is a cost involved. And in a moment, we're going to talk about some ways to get reviews that won't cost you. The other downside is you don't have any control over the rating a Vine reviewer gives you. However, when do you really? Because unless you're asking friends and family to leave you 5-star reviews, which by the way is not compliant, even if a customer who bought from you elsewhere leaves you a review, yes, you've probably got a fairly good idea they're going to leave you a good one, but you don't know for sure. What I will say about Vine reviewers, and this is just anecdotal in my experience, is their reviews tend to be very thorough. They will often leave photos, they will leave videos. They're not just going to write, "This is nice," because their place on the Vine program is dependent on them writing really useful reviews. And I believe the way you get a place is you're invited. And when you read a review on Amazon and you can click the button at the bottom to say whether you found the review helpful or not. I think if you leave enough reviews and enough people vote that your reviews are helpful, that's how you get invited onto Vine. And obviously to keep your place, you need to be writing reviews of a similar quality, which is why they're often so detailed. So I feel that, you're going to be getting really high quality reviews. I can't promise they're all going to be 5-star. However, if your products are good, why wouldn't they be really? I think if your product is great, and I'm sure all of your products are, I cannot see why you wouldn't be getting good ratings. And even if you're not always getting 5-star, that's not always a bad thing. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So yeah, put a pin in that. The only other downside to using Vine is if your products or your situation is a bit complex, it might not work for you so well. So for example, I work with a brand in the US and they sell lawn care products. And because of the US, obviously it's a massive country and geographically, the seasons are very different. Their products would be suitable for customers in some states in certain times of the year, certain seasons, and other states maybe a bit later in the year because it's sort of weather dependent. But there's no way to specify that. So if they submitted their products to Vine, and somebody got their product but they couldn't actually use it because maybe they were in a state where it was still slightly colder and it wasn't quite the time for lawn care or something like that, that would be a bit of an issue because that customer presumably couldn't use a product and couldn't leave a review. Or if they did leave a review, the review might not be reflective of the product because if the customer uses it at the wrong time of year, they're not obviously going to get the optimal experience, if that makes sense. So that is something to consider. I also worked with a brand who sold shoes, and their shoes came in so many different sizes and sizes and colours, as shoes often do. And that's really tricky as well because which ones do you offer for Vine, for example? Do you offer all of them? Well, that's obviously a lot of stock that you're potentially tying up for Vine. Although saying that if you say you send in stock for Vine and it gets sold via other customers, that's not actually a problem. Amazon aren't going to penalise you or anything for that. But what I mean is it can be quite hard if you're sending in stock hoping it's going to sell via Vine and it doesn't, and you've got a lot of stock in various sizes and styles sat in Amazon, particularly if, for that example with the shoes, this brand were using FBM initially because it's hard to predict at first which sizes and styles will sell quicker. So how many do you send in for FBA? So if you're going to send in FBA stock just for Vine, this is quite a logistical thing to think about. So for these reasons, for the two brands that I've mentioned, Vine may not be as appropriate or maybe harder, because that's the other thing. Reviewers aren't going to take something, or they shouldn't take something they can't review. So if you have, you're offering shoes in size 4 and no Vine reviewers need a size 4 shoe, they're not going to take you up on that. And by the way, if people don't take your product with Vine, you don't get charged. So that's something worth knowing. But of course, that means you also don't get the reviews. As I said, I've got a full episode about Vine. I'll link through in the show notes where I talk about it in more detail if that might be useful, if that is something you're considering. Now, if you're not, or even if you are, because there's no reason you can't run Vine and look for other ways to get reviews, there are some things you can do that are not going to cost you. I would say they're not going to cost you money. They might cost you product. They're not going to cost you as much money. So one thing you can do is get reviews from your existing customers. And how you would do this potentially is to direct your current audience to Amazon at the time that you launch. And I would always position this as a short-term shift because I presume that a sale on your website is more profitable than one on Amazon. You don't necessarily want all of your existing customers going straight over to Amazon. So I would position this as support for your launch rather than a permanent change. And you could use your email list, you could use social media. Maybe you want to do some sort of offer just for your website customers. I'm just launching on Amazon. Please support my launch. Here's 10% off if you order in the next 48 hours. If you are offering any sort of incentive, first of all, it has to be an incentive to buy from you, not an incentive to leave a review. That's super important. You can't incentivize reviews. And also I would make any offer or promotion you do really short, because if it's like, oh, I'm offering 10% off for the next week, you know what, I do this myself. I think, oh, that sounds like a good offer. Oh, yeah, I'll go and get something. And you just don't, do you? Because life happens. Whereas if it's kind of immediate, it's like next 48 hours, next 24 hours, people are much more likely to do it. It also sends really strong signals to Amazon's algorithm. If over like a weekend, say, you suddenly get an influx of sales and then reviews, it tells Amazon that, oh, okay, this product's really relevant. People are searching for it, they're buying it, and then they're reviewing it. So that really helps with the algorithm as well. So ways you can encourage reviews, and I say encourage rather than ask, you'll see why, without breaking the rules are, so you can send emails. You can't actually now email customers directly via the Amazon via Seller Central. You used to be. So a few years ago, so you might have seen, in case you hear people telling you this or you read it somewhere, this is outdated now. You used to have in Seller Central be able to send emails to customers asking them to review your product once they'd received it. I think you had to wait like 48 hours until after it had arrived and you could do this. You can technically still do that. So you could go into the communication section of Seller Central and you could send messages to all your customers, but most of them won't get it because most of them will have turned all of these emails off. In fact, I feel like Amazon turned them off automatically and you had to opt in. I think that might be the way you did it. I haven't received one of those emails myself for years now, and most people won't. So this isn't worth doing. However, if you know that your current customers, let's say you've asked your existing customers to go to Amazon and support your launch and buy your product on Amazon, there's nothing wrong with you then sending a follow-up email saying, if you took advantage of my offer and you bought my product on Amazon, I would really love it if you could leave me a review. That's absolutely fine. You do, however, need to be really careful here. So you can ask for a review, but you have to ask neutrally. So you can't incentivize reviews. So you can't say, leave a review and I'll give you a discount on your next website purchase, leave a review, you get a free gift, whatever it is. You can't do that. You also can't ask specifically for positive reviews. So you can't say, leave me a 5-star review. You have to say, leave a review or leave me an honest review or, that kind of wording. You can't say, leave me a good review, leave me great. None of that. And you need to keep it really keep it really neutral is my best advice here. Other ways you can get reviews, so this is from anybody who buys from you, is by using packaging inserts. So you could have a little card inside your packaging that says, we'd really appreciate a review. And again, same applies to the wording, really neutral. Amazon has no problem with you asking people to leave you a review because reviews are good. Reviews help conversions, which helps Amazon make more money. They will have a problem if you're incentivizing the review or you're asking people to leave a positive review. Talking of incentivizing reviews, if you wanted to give someone something for leaving a review, let's say one of your customers leaves you a lovely review on Amazon, sending them something as a gift after they've done it is absolutely fine. But you just can't ask. You just can't make that ask up front, if that makes sense. So if, lots of your customers are leaving you lovely Amazon reviews and you want to say thank you, you want to offer them a discount or whatever it is you want to do, you absolutely can do that, but you cannot ask for that up front. So I hope that's clear. Other ways, obviously, to encourage reviews are giving your customers a great experience. This kind of sounds really obvious, but this is really big. Obviously, if Amazon are fulfilling your orders for you, this is also something to keep an eye out on the other side, which is that if Amazon are fulfilling your orders and their courier throws something over the gate or it arrives damaged, often you can get a negative review for that. But this is out of your control. This is not your fault. When this happens, do address it. Amazon will remove reviews if they can see it's nothing to do with the product and the seller. But if you're doing your own fulfillment, it can really help if you use a good courier, you make sure your items are dispatched on time, that they arrived on time as much as you can. I know some of this is out of your control, because in my experience, something people complain about a lot is the delivery. And if you go to yourself on Amazon and you read through any product review, you are going to get the ones that say, well, this would have been great, but the box was damaged, or whatever it is. There's always, that's something that people do tend to like to complain about. So I think it may not help with getting the positive reviews, but it will definitely help to reduce the negative reviews, because in my experience, people often like to leave a review when they're really happy or when they're really not happy. So if we can reduce some of those not happy reviews, then that's obviously a really good thing. And actually, the other thing we can do to reduce negative reviews is make sure that your product is super easy to use. And I know some of this sounds really obvious, and that all the information that people need is there on the product page. So to give you an example of what I mean here, I worked with an author who sold books, and they were pocket books. So if you're on the camera, you can kind of see me holding like my fingers up. But imagine a book that fits like in a jacket, like a man's or women's, I suppose, jacket breast pocket. It was they were that sort of size. And even though the title said pocketbook, people were buying them, and then they were leaving reviews going, well, this book was tiny. I expected it to be full size, because I guess people didn't know what a pocketbook necessarily meant. Maybe they didn't know the wording. So we reworded the listing and also added an image that showed the book inside someone's pocket, and then also another one showing the book with measurements. And it really reduced the number of negative reviews, because I guess people then were like, when they were buying it knowing it was small, because all of the bad reviews until that point were just that. It was like, this book is really small. And the information was there on the listing, it just wasn't clear enough. So we were able to take action, and that really helped reduce the number of bad reviews. Because remember, it isn't just, while this episode I'm focused on getting reviews, obviously we want you to be getting positive reviews. So for the same time we can reduce any bad reviews, of course, that's a good thing. And speaking of this, I want to talk a little bit now about star rating versus volume of reviews, because I think this is important. So I think star rating matters because it's the first thing customers notice on your listing. So as you know, if you go to the Amazon search page and you search for anything, as well as the title, you see the star rating and the number of reviews a listing has. So it gives you an immediate expectation of quality. So if ratings are lower, say below 4-star average, that can reduce conversions, and it might influence whether someone even clicks on your product, if I'm honest. However, volume of reviews matters just as much, because if you have a higher number of reviews, it builds trust, it builds credibility, customers can see multiple people have bought and used a product, and the more reviews you have, the more reassurance it gives that the product is consistent. So for me, I think a product of like 50 4-star reviews feels a bit more proven than a product with 3 5-star reviews, for example. And when customers assess reviews, they're basically looking at the star rating and the number. They're going to compare your review count to your competitors. They're going to read a few recent reviews, and they're going to think, do I trust this enough to buy? So if you have a handful of 5-star reviews, let's say you have 3 5-star reviews, I would say on its own, it still isn't quite enough. And I'm sorry to say that, because a small number of reviews can still feel untested or a little bit risky. It might not give enough insight into the product. It can maybe feel a bit too perfect, a bit unrealistic, which is why I do sometimes recommend using Vine and getting your initial 10 reviews, because double figures is a good number. And it's also why, if you do use Vine and you get the odd person who doesn't give you 5 stars, I don't think it's always a bad thing. So for me, I think what good looks like is not necessarily hundreds of reviews. I think if you've got like 10 reviews, that's great for initial credibility. And then I think, you get to like 15 to 30 reviews, you are going to notice an improvement in your conversions. But ongoing growth, I think, is more important than hitting a specific number. And remember, you are going to get some organic reviews. I'm talking about ways to sort of proactively go and get reviews, but you are going to get some organically as well. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is, I guess, the mindset shift I wanted to speak about is that you're not aiming for perfect reviews. So I don't think you need to be aiming for all 5-star reviews. You're just aiming to get enough reviews to build trust. And I think a mix of reviews is completely normal. And as your volume of reviews increases, you will get some lower ratings. So if you have got all 5-star reviews and then someone leaves you a 3 or a 4 or even a 2, I really don't want you to worry, because as long as your average review rating is, 4 and above, it's still really competitive. And I think customers do trust slightly imperfect ratings more than a perfect score. I think, a product with 5 reviews at 5 stars versus a product with 50 reviews at 4.5, which to you feels the most reliable? So please don't worry if your overall rating isn't 5 stars, because I do think that's unrealistic. I mean, let's be honest, you can't please everyone as well. Like, whatever you do, however amazing your product is, however good the fulfillment is, your packaging, all of this, people are people. You cannot please everyone. So please do not worry if your overall star rating is not a 5, because that is so unlikely. You can go onto Amazon now and look at some of the products that you personally love and see their star rating. I don't think I see many with a 5-star rating. Maybe at first, maybe when they're first launching and they're doing all the things I'm speaking about, and they've got, 10, 15 reviews and they're from existing customers, or they're buying reviews or whatever they are, then yes, people might have a 5-star rating. But once, people get into the 30s, 50s, hundreds of reviews, very few products rate that high. Yes, they might have a high rating, by the way. It might be like 4.5, 4.6, but 5, it's quite unlikely. So, final thing, let's talk a little bit about how to handle negative reviews, because I think it is important. First thing I want to say is, if you get a negative Amazon review, and I know it's easier said than done, and I totally know this, but do try not to take it personally, because they are normal. As I say, people are people. You cannot please everyone. And I would look at it, and I know it seems very, I don't know, you might be rolling your eyes at me saying this, but look at what you can learn from it, really. Because there's not a lot you can do. So you can respond to in at Seller Central now, under the brand section. If someone leaves you a review that's 3 stars or below, you can contact the customer now and respond. So that's something you can do. So keep an eye on that. If the review is bad and it's something that's completely out of your control, so as I say, a bad delivery experience, for example, if Amazon were managing the delivery for you, you can request that review gets removed. If the review is like really offensive, you can request that it gets reviewed. But otherwise, you can't do a lot, unfortunately, about it. So if someone just really dislikes your product and absolutely slates it, as long as that review is fair, whether you agree with it or not, you can't actually do much about it. And I'm really sorry to say that. However, what you can do is you can look at your product listing and go, okay, what are they? So look at the review and say, what are they not happy about? Is it something they've misunderstood? And is there anything I can do to my product listing that will prevent this happening in future? So I gave the example earlier about the books. Is there something I can add to listing? Is there, I don't know, are there ingredients that aren't listed, or is there even something to do with the product? So, for example, I worked with another brand who sold supplements, and their supplements were gluten-free, and the listing stated it was gluten-free. But for some reason, and I don't know why, I think this is something they obviously missed, their packaging didn't actually say that the product was gluten-free, even though it was. And so they were getting negative reviews from customers saying, I bought this expecting it to be gluten-free, but it isn't, or I don't know if it is. So they were then able to update the packaging to make that clear. It was just something missed off the label for some reason. And again, that stopped the negative reviews. Or it might be that an image that's missing, or some ingredients, or whatever it is. But just look at that review and think critically, that is there something that I can change in my listing that will prevent this happening again? And if there is, then make that change. I'm just going to finish off by talking about some of the common mistakes that I see and how to avoid them. So the first thing is, and I've mentioned a lot of these through the episode already, but I think it's useful to hear them again. So the first one is running out of no reviews. Of course, you can do that, but please don't, because you will get a much better return if you've got some reviews on your listing. The second thing is waiting for reviews to just happen, because you will get some organic reviews, but they might take a long time. And equally, it's hard to get sales without reviews. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, isn't it? So I think I would proactively go out and seek reviews to get yourself started. Panicking over a negative review, as I say, negative reviews aren't nice. And if you get one, I really do feel for you, because I know you've put so much into your product, and it's awful when somebody sort of has something negative to say about it. But know that it's not personal. It's not about you. It might not even be about your product. That person might just had a really bad day. And, people are, as I keep saying, people are people. Please don't take it personally. Look at it as an opportunity to learn and improve. And that leads me on to the next one, which is not fixing or addressing anything that leads to negative reviews, particularly if you're getting repeated reviews, even if they're not negative. If someone's mentioning the same thing over and over, so missing information on your product page, for example, if you see something like that, please fix it. Other mistakes I see are people doing things that aren't compliant to get reviews. So asking friends and family to leave reviews, incentivizing reviews, buying the product themselves to review it. I see all sorts of things. Don't do any of these, because this can, this could lead to suspension. And then the other one is focusing on the star rating a bit too much, in my opinion, and, not thinking about the volume. Because as I said, having 55-star reviews is unlikely. However good your product is, please don't just focus on the number, focus on the volume. And if your product is good, that the rating overall will be good as well. So I'm just going to close by saying that I hope you found this episode useful. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know, vicky@vickyweinberg.com. And just a final reminder that reviews is not like a one-off thing. Yes, I do focus on reviews a lot with brands who are just launching. However, they are part of your ongoing strategy. And the goal is just momentum. Just keep those reviews building. And you will get to a level where you're like, okay, I've got enough that I don't need to actively seek them anymore, because my listing's converting really well, my average rating is good, and you will know when you get there. But do consider this to be a long-term thing and not just a quick one-off task that you're going to do once and forget about. Now, this has been a longer episode than most of my solo episodes, but I hope you found this, like I say, really useful. I would love to know your thoughts. Please leave me a comment, rate and review this episode. If you know anyone else that will find this useful, please share, and I will speak to you again soon.
Thank you so much for listening right to the end of this episode. Do remember that you can get the full back catalogue and lots of free resources on my website, vickyweinberg.com. Please do remember to rate and review this episode if you've enjoyed it, and also share it with a friend who you think might find it useful. Thank you again, and see you next week. Hello, if you're selling on Amazon or you're planning to and you'd like ongoing support as you go, I've just opened the doors to my membership, Amazon Made Easy. It's a space for product-based business owners who want expert guidance, somewhere to ask questions, and a bit of structure and accountability while they build and grow on Amazon. Inside, you'll get regular live Q&A calls with me, optional co-working sessions, practical resources, and a supportive community of people all working on similar things. It's designed to make selling on Amazon feel clearer, simpler, and much less overwhelming, and to give you somewhere to go where you're stuck or unsure of what to do next. You can join at any time and stay for as long as it's helpful. And if you'd like to take a look, you'll find the full link in the show notes.